So in terms of next steps, what students are going to need to do is they are going to need to log into their application portal. So that is where it showed that they were admitted back when they applied for admission, and it showed their admission and status update. It also has their next steps. So the first step a student needs to do is they need to submit a enrollment fee. So that is a non-refundable enrollment fee. So if a student changes their mind and decides to defer,
Travis picked Let It All Work Out.
just a reminder to please make sure that everybody is muted. Thank you so much. So they need to pay a non-refundable enrollment fee. For freshmen, it is $300, and for transfer, it is $100. If you are a freshman and you need assistance with that enrollment fee, you will go onto your application portal and you will complete the enrollment fee waiver request. You do have to submit documentation. It does need to be signed by a counselor or teacher, showing that you do have economic need. As well, if you are a transfer student, then you will need to email transfer@mst.edu. So that's that first step. Then you're going to need to sign up for advising and registration. You will sign up online and you are going to select what day you will come. And I'll talk about what's going to happen at advising and registration soon. Then a student is going to need to submit their housing information form. That's basically your housing contract. You're going to need to pay a $100 housing application fee. So those are the steps that students need to take to accept their admission. You can also find these at the futurestudents.mst.edu link. It is listed there, but again, that should have been in their admit packet. And if we can all stay muted at all times, that would be greatly appreciated, so we don't have any background noise. And then that is on their application portal. So on advising and registration, what is going to happen is they are going to need to complete their online orientation, typically about 14 days prior to their A&R day is preferable. And then they will also need to complete their math placement exam. You definitely want to have this done 14 days prior to A&R. So a student does need to complete their math placement exam if they have not completed Calc 2 or higher by the time their advising and registration day is happening. And that is going to determine their math placements test. If a student doesn't have this completed by the time of their A&R and they don't have any credit, they're going to be placed in one of the lower math courses. A student can take it after and then reach out to their advisor to get that math change. So they still have time to do it even if they haven't completed it by the time of their advising and registration. A student will have 3 attempts to take that math placement test. It is proctored, so a student does need to have access to a webcam and reliable internet. Of course, if a student does not, we are able to help assist with that. But most importantly, that is going to be the day that students will meet with their advisors and register for their classes. So they will be walking away being enrolled in their coursework. There is advising and registration days happening now. We do have one coming up next week. We have some virtual ones all the way through August. So the students will need to sign up on their application portal for that date. We also have some upcoming admitted student events to really get students started off on the right foot. So we have our minor welcome bash. This is where it is open to parents as well as their students. They can bring multiple guests if they would like. It is very conference style. And so there's different sessions that students can sit in on parents. You can split up. You don't have to stay together the entire time. Students will meet opening week mentors. So that's upperclassmen that have signed up to mentor students during that opening week so they can get their first chance of meeting them in June. They also have design and build blocks so they can meet other incoming students and already build that community before they start in August. We will have opening week. And so students, I'll talk about move-in here shortly, but students freshmen are on campus August 18th through the 22nd. They're put with a opening week group, and that is going to be led by a upperclassman that has signed up to lead that group.
Look, I figured it out. Yeah, I can hear it. I just heard it. What kind of class is this for? I just heard orientation.
It's Q&A.
Again, just that reminder to make sure that you guys are muted. I see several that are unmuted, so please make sure that you have checked and that you have muted your camera or muted your microphone. Anyway, so August 18th through the 22nd is when that opening week will happen. And so they'll participate in multiple sessions to help prepare them for the fall and transition into the new experience. I know it may be scary going from being with your parents and in high school to somewhere new. They will also do what's called Project X. So they build a little race car and they compete against other teams. So it's a lot of fun that they participate in, but it is going to help them transition. So again, that week is August 18th through the 22nd. In terms of housing, what a student is going to need to do to get housing is they need to sign up for advising and registration, like I mentioned, pay that non-refundable enrollment fee. They need to complete that housing interest form. On that housing interest form, they are going to select their housing preferences. So they're going to rank their residential halls. They're going to select their roommate. If they know who they want to room with, both people do need to select each other. And they also want to talk beforehand to make sure their housing preferences match, because they won't know if being in residential commons is more important or being in TJ if their roommates are listed on there. You can also choose to go with kind of a random roommate. And I don't say random as we're just going to put you with a random person. Typically, all the students will fill out a questionnaire that asks them, you know, are you a morning person? Do you like to sleep with the TV on? Things like that. So we can help match them with someone that they would be a good fit for. And then they're going to select their meal plan. They do need to complete their housing application by paying that $100 housing application fee. That is also non-refundable. And then if you do need a waiver for that housing application fee, you can reach out to Residential Life at mst.edu, and they can give you that form to complete if you have need and need financial assistance with that housing application. Move-in is set for Sunday, August 17th for incoming freshmen. Transfer students don't necessarily have to move in at that time, and you can reach out to Residential Life if you'd like to move in earlier, but typically that move-in is going to be Sunday, August 17th. Students are going to get emailed a time that they need to be there to check in, get their ID, get their keys, and then they will go to their residential hall, and we will have assistance there to help students move in. So they do need to pay attention to their S&T email as well as their personal email so that they can make sure they have all of that information, but it will be emailed closer to August what time and where they're going to check in. You can also scan that QR code here for the housing guide. That is a really detailed guide over what's allowed in the residential halls, what's not, community outreach, how residential assistants work, all of those different things. That housing guide is really beneficial. So again, you can scan that QR code right there. So I'll give you just a second if you want to go ahead and scan that. If you do, I can always go back to I can always go back to that slide if you need it later on in the after we're done. In terms of what residential halls they have to select, the common freshman residential halls are going to be residential commons. That is going to be suite style. Then there is Thomas Jefferson Hall, which is going to be community style, where they share the bathroom with the floor. And then there's University Commons. It's actually apartment style. So that actually has a full kitchen. So it does have a stove, a full refrigerator, a little living area, a little dining area. So very much like an apartment. So those are the three most common freshman halls. Minor Village and Rolla Suites are typically not available for incoming freshmen, but they are available for transfer students. So transfer students are eligible for those apartments as well. Then we do count fraternities and sororities as university approved housing. So if you are interested in joining fraternity and sorority life, you can reach out to the fraternities. They will start doing recruitment in the summer. They will also be at advising and registration, both fraternities and sororities, that you can start talking to them and talk about how that process works. Fraternities, you typically can move in right away. So instead of moving into one of the residential halls, you can move into one of the fraternities. And then sororities will typically do their recruitment during opening week. So you wouldn't move directly in there. A lot of them will do it at semester or that next year. Then we have that Christian campus houses that are also considered university approved housing. So those are typically the residential hall houses. Students can look at living off campus if they meet several guidelines, which is listed on our residential life website. Incoming freshmen and transfer, if they don't meet those, they do need to fill out an exemption form. In terms of meal plans, there are several different meal plans that students can get. So there is the Platinum, which is unlimited and about 150 declining balance dollars. And declining balance dollars are typically like cash that they could use at the food court. So 150 DVDs is basically $150 that they have to use at any of the food locations. The unlimited is specifically for TJ Hall only. You have to live in TJ Hall and you can only use the meal swipes in TJ Hall, but it is literally unlimited. You can eat every hour on the hour if you wanted. And then the DVDs you can use anywhere. Then there's Gold, which is typically if you're going to be a breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of person, that's a good option. Then again, they have $200 cash that they can use at any of the locations. Then there's Silver, which is going to be 300 meals. And that's going to be if you're more of a lunch and dinner, but going to grab a granola bar in the morning rather than actually going for breakfast. And that has a 330 DVDs. Two of the other common meal plans are going to be the Bronze and the Emerald that are basically just DVDs. These are really popular for students that live in residential commons or university commons because they go and eat at Havner a lot, which is basically a food court where they can just pick what they want. So a meal will say, this is just an example, not an exact number, is maybe worth for lunch $8.50. So you go to Chick-fil-A, and you spend $9. So they'll swipe your meal and then you have 50 cents over. It takes that off of the DVDs. Where the Bronze, they don't necessarily have to worry about the meal point. It's basically just cash that they have to use at that food court. And so we have several different food locations on campus. We have our Havner Center, which is like a food court at a mall where there's different locations. There's Einstein, there are Einstein Bagels, there's Chick-fil-A, there's Sub Sandwich place. Then there's TJ Hall, which is an all you care to eat buffet kind of style. We also have several coffee locations on campus, and we do have a partnership with Papa John's where you can get pizza delivered to your room and use your declining balance dollars. Okay, we got a lot of question on how billing works. So for the upcoming fall, your students' bills are typically generated around the 15th of each month. And so August, the first bill is not going to typically generate until July 15th. However, if a student has not attended their advising and registration yet, so they haven't enrolled in classes, it may not be ready by that July 15th date. But if your student has attended that A&R before then, the bill will start that 15th of the month. So you can break it up into 4 payments, so you can kind of finance. And the way it's going to work is it's going to be due on the 10th of the following month. So that bill generates in July. For the fall, it's going to be August 10th, September 10th, October 10th, and November 5th and November 10th. Typically, that last bill is any cleanup. So, you know, if they charge something on their student account, it's typically those kinds of things. All scholarships, grants, any loans that they have is going to be applied first and subtracted from that overall balance. And then what is remaining will show up on that bill in July and be broken up into those 4 payments if you choose to do that. So all of those scholarships, all of those aids are subtracted before you are billed. If a student has more than what the estimated tuition and things like that, they may be eligible for a refund for personal expenses, travel, because that's also taken into consider the total cost of education. Now, spring semester, that bill is going to generate in December, and then it's going to be due January, February, March, and April. So that is typically how it works. If you are wanting to pay your student's bill, your student does need to make you an authorized user in their JOES portal. So their student your student should have created their JOES account. If they haven't, their username is on their application portal. Then they're going to need to go to joes.mst.edu and set that up. And then once they're in there, they need to complete the FERPA release. So that means that if you need to call about your student, they can discuss certain things with you, and they need to add you as an authorized user to view and pay bills. Otherwise, we cannot share that information. It would be against federal guidelines for us to share any grades, if they're registered in specific classes or any classes, or discuss their billing with you. So please make sure if your student has not done that and you guys are wanting that, that they do go into their JOES portal and make sure you're an authorized user. We get a lot of questions about our career fair and internships. So freshmen can start going to our career fair, as well as incoming transfer students, even if maybe you are not super involved in your courses yet. I highly encourage students to go and do that. We do have several freshmen that get internship offers and co-op offers their summer of their freshman year. So we'll typically do 2 career fairs, one in the fall and one in the spring. Now, they're each broken up into a 2-day career fair, one that's going to be focused on full-time positions. So that's for students that are graduating and needing that full-time job. And then another day will be focused on those co-ops and internships. So the co-ops and internships, those are really great ways that students can make money. And that's why we have really good return on investment for our students, because you can see that they earn around $3,700 a month. So a co-op is a semester and a summer where you take off and you go work for a company. That's about 8 months. We put scholarships on hold. Students need to enroll in a 1-hour co-op course, so they get credit for it. But all scholarships, financial aid is put on hold, versus an internship, which is around 3 months in the summer. Depends on the student, depends on the company, if they want to do co-ops or internships. We've had student ambassadors that have only done co-ops. We've had student ambassadors that have only done internships. So it really does depend, but several of our office workers take advantage of that. And if you're working 8 months, making over $3,000, there's saving for after you graduate, any student loans. That's really where students start seeing that return on investment they get with an S&T degree. And then our average salary is around $74,000 upon graduation. So our students make really good money. Of course, that career fair is a great place for students to find that, but I highly recommend that they go to events that we have year round. Google has done a co-jam with our students. Boeing does a Boeing Day on campus where they've brought a flight simulator. Clorox has thrown a barbecue. So go to those events because they can be very helpful. We also have what's called Jobwordly. And that's where students can log in. They can find campus employment, so part-time jobs, but they can also look for internships and co-ops. And our CWR office vets every single one of them. We do not support unpaid internships or co-ops. So to recruit on our campus, those positions have to be paid. We do have a ton of other resources for students as well. And you can see in that top right corner, there is the QR code that you can scan for our student resource website. And that is going to show you all the kinds of different resources we have. But we have things like a food pantry, emergency fund. We have counseling that students can take advantage of for free. We have group counseling, individual. We also have peer counseling. So they are trained if your students maybe don't feel comfortable talking to an adult, they want to talk to a peer, they can do that. We have a writing center. We also have our student success center. So free tutoring. They can teach time management if they don't know how to take notes, if they didn't have to study in high school and they haven't developed those skills, all of those different things. Testing anxiety. Students can also get accommodations. So if the students need accessibility resources, we have exam and quiz accommodations. So if they need an extended time, if they need alternate format textbooks, if they need any accommodations with residential and dining, if they have allergies, if they have to have a single room, so many different accommodations. The way a student will need to request accommodations for any type or accessibility accommodations is they need to complete an application on minor access. And you can go onto that student resource website. It should be able to take you there. They're going to need to provide third-party documentation. And typically students that need accommodations have this already. But we do get the question, does a 504 plan transfer to college? Those do not. Those are meant just for K through 12. But you will need to provide additional documentation from their doctor, anything like that. Once that's submitted, there'll be an intake interview. So student and accessibility and testing will contact the student after they've received the application and documentation, and they will set up an intake interview so they can discuss your needs and work out a plan. And then typically they do touch base throughout the semester to make sure that those accommodations that you guys set forth are working and they don't need adjusting. Now, before students arrive on campus, they need to do several things. They need to send any of their official final transcripts once they finish their school. So once they've graduated high school, we will need those sent. We will start sending emails mid-May, so coming up very shortly. You don't have to have it in right away, but it does need to be submitted prior to the start of class. So it is going to need to have all of your grades as well as your graduation date. And then any college that they've attended and had college credit from, those transcripts will need to be sent as well. And then if they've taken AP classes, those will need to be sent from College Board to our university. And then once we receive those, our office will send them over to registrars, and then registrars will get them added to the student's account. But they can send it to S&T admissions. A lot of colleges will use Parchment to send it, and you just request those on their website. So it's a very easy process. But again, we have to have every single college transcript that you've attended, all your AP credits, your official final high school transcript. It is not optional to transfer credits. If they took a college class, regardless if they passed it or not, it has to be submitted. So you definitely want to have all of those in. If a student does not have those in, we do put a hold on their account, and they will be unable to register that next semester. We also have to have official test scores if a student was admitted or had a scholarship based on a test score. So if a student applied test optional and there was nothing, there was no scholarship, or their admission type was not based on a test, they don't necessarily have to submit that. But I still recommend students sending their official test scores, because we will upgrade scholarships all the way through their June ACT test if they're an incoming freshman. And if you're test optional and your ACT actually would have qualified you for higher, we will upgrade you. So we won't use it if it hurts you. So it only is beneficial. We only use it if it is beneficial. Students also need to complete all of their required medical information on our student health website. So they'll need to submit all of their vaccination records, things that are specifically required to live in the residential hall. So all of that will need to be submitted on the student health website. And if a student is wanting to bring a car, which incoming freshmen can have a car, same for transfer. So incoming students can bring a car starting their freshman year. But if they want to park it on campus, they do have to have a parking permit. And they're going to request that at parking.mst.edu. They'll log in with their Joe's username information, and then they're going to select the lots that they would like to be considered for. I encourage students to select as many lots as possible. Everybody always wants the lot closest to their residential hall. So the more lots you have on there, the more likely it is that you'll get your parking permit. If they would like to also have textbooks, they can order their textbooks through a bookstore. The bookstore can look at your schedule and pull all of all of the books that you need. But if you'd rather do it through like Amazon or Rent or anything like that, you can look at your Canvas. And once you are enrolled in classes and get that all that login information, which would happen after advising and registration. All of that course material that's needed will be listed for the student in their Canvas account. Also, this is for students only. So if parents, if you try to scan that QR code and join, then you won't be admitted because it is vetted. However, you can share that QR code with your student, and it is S&T's Meet Your Class. So again, this is for students only, no parents or guardians allowed. And it is where students can meet other incoming students. And so they can put, if they're looking for a roommate, if they really enjoy spending time at the gym, and they can meet other students with common interests or that are also looking for a roommate. So it's a really good way for them to build a community prior to them starting in August. So that QR code is at that bottom right corner. So feel free to scan that and share that link with your students. But again, that is for students only. I will talk about parent resources here a little bit, so you can also know that you are supported, and we understand that you also want to be part of your child's journey. And so there is several resources for you guys as well. This one is just specific for students, but I highly encourage you to encourage them to join so they can build that community prior. So we also got a ton of other inquiries about specific things. So one was, what is your advice for incoming students? A couple of little pieces of advice is really get involved. That is super important. Don't get over involved that first semester. I typically recommend 3. One related to the student's major, something that they're really passionate about, and maybe something they never thought they would do, like aerial swing dancing or spelunking, because we do have those clubs. I also really, really recommend asking for help when they need it. Don't wait till the end of the semester and they are struggling and they have to have an A on that next test. Really go for help as soon as they start not really understanding that material. We have a lot of students that maybe didn't have to study in high school, and they get to S&T and they haven't developed those study skills, and they maybe aren't the smartest person in the class anymore. They're surrounded by other valedictorians and students that were in the top of their class. So that can be a little bit of an adjustment period. My brother was very much like that. He never had to study in high school. I did. I developed study skills. He didn't have any. So he graduated from S&T as well. And it took him a minute, but he finally learned to go to the professor, go to those, the Student Success Center, chemistry, physics, calculus. They all have specific tutoring sessions for students. So definitely tell them not to be afraid to ask for help. It is okay. But really make sure that they do get involved and step out of their comfort zone. It's college, and it's a important time for them to try and make new friends. It's their first time they may be living away from home. Everyone is feeling a little bit nervous. Definitely also tell them to really take full advantage of opening week. Students that really give it their all during opening week do better than students that don't. So really make sure that they know that opening week is a really great time, and everyone is feeling nervous too. When I went to college, I cried for the first 2 weeks. I didn't know anybody. But I had to push myself and get out of my comfort zone. It was really hard, but I'm very glad I did. We also got a question about off-campus housing. So there's several different options for off-campus housing. So if your student is a transfer student and is able to live off campus, we have a ton of different rental companies. Investment Realty is one that a lot of students use. We also have the lodges. That's where a lot of students live. There's several apartments that are right by campus, like the Shamrock Apartments. So Brown Rental, there's just a ton of rental companies that students can go through, and a lot of student housing. I definitely recommend, going through Google, meeting with different rental companies, touring different apartments. It is very easy to find off-campus housing here. But the ones that I listed are several of the really popular ones that a lot of our students will live at. In terms of items that are allowed in the residential halls or provided. So a mini fridge is provided, except for in University Commons, where you actually have a full fridge. Microwave is not provided, so you would need one of those. Air fryers are allowed. That is one of the most common questions, but it cannot be any more than 6 quarts. But please be aware, it can't be an air fryer oven. It has to be like an air fryer where the element is enclosed. hot pots or coffee pots are also eligible. But again, it does have to be enclosed. There cannot be any exposed elements. That is a fire hazard. So no George Foreman grills, no toasters. And on that housing guide that I showed earlier with that QR code, this does list all of that as well. Another question we received was about the Honors Academy format. So the way the Honors Academy will work is that first year is kind of a transition period. So they're going to sit in some first year seminars, networking, start doing leadership and campus involvement. And then from there, their sophomore, junior, senior year, they're going to need to take 12 hours of honors coursework every year. And it's kind of up to the student. They actually get to pick what classes that they make honors. So it really allows the student to customize their honors experience. So if there's a professor that they can really connect with, or there's a class that they're really interested in, they can choose to make that honors and do working in the lab, extra research projects, things like that to make that an honors coursework. And then their senior year, they will need to do a senior year thesis and present that to the Honors Academy board. And then they will graduate with honors. It will be on their diploma, on their transcript. They get recognition at graduation, get a medallion. And of course, that does come with a $1,000 a year scholarship. And then there is that honors housing that they can choose to live in residential commons. I did kind of touch on working on campus, but I want to touch on it again. We do get the question, do I have to have work study to work on campus? You absolutely do not have to have work study to work on campus. Any student, full-time student is eligible to work on campus as long as they have appropriate documentation. But students can find that on Jobboardly, but there's usually also flyers listed around campus as well. So keep an eye out on the flyers and bulletin boards. Usually there's like little flyers on tables sometimes. You can also go into the department that you're interested in working with. So if you want to work in the fitness center or in admissions, we are hiring constantly. We have students that come in and just want to fill out an application. And even if we're not hiring at that point, we will hold the applications until we are. So there's plenty of different ways that students can apply. Jobboardly is very common, but students can start looking for those as soon as they're enrolled in classes. And then in terms of computers, this is a very popular question on what kind of computer that they need to bring, what brand. We don't necessarily have a brand that you have to have. Either Mac or PC platforms are fine. The most common and what we sell at our bookstore is going to be Dell or Mac. But IT does recommend several different operating systems. One, Windows 11. And it needs to have 16 GB of RAM. And then if it is a Mac computer, please be aware that the Mac OS system can be used if it's Microsoft Office compatible. So I will say a lot of our students do lean more towards like the PC. My brother particularly felt like it just worked better with a lot of the programs that students use in engineering, IST computer science. He was an IST major, but that is not required. We have plenty of students that have Mac. I know several student workers in our office that use Mac. We also have what's called Apps Anywhere. So a student can log in and get any of the applications that students may need to use for their course, so they don't have to buy that. We also have computer labs that are open all the time. We have several in different residential halls in the library. So a student does not have to have specific computers, but again, those are what's recommended, and you can also find that on the IT website. And then if you do choose to shop at our bookstore, they can also assist you. But again, Mac or Dell is what we typically see on campus. It just needs to have those minimum operating systems to be the best for the student. Like I said, we absolutely know that this is a journey for not just the students, but also parents and family. So there's several different resources students have or families have. So one, the website, which is listed right there. We do also have Missouri S&T Family and Friends Facebook. I highly recommend that you follow them. They post a lot of different things about what's happening on campus, events specific for parents and families. But there's several different things that I recommend you subscribing to or checking out. And that is subscribing to our Parent and Family Connection. And so that will send out kind of a newsletter about, again, what's going on campus, any specific events. And then you can also check out our family and parent Q&A, frequently asked questions, excuse me. We get a lot of questions, and so that is a really helpful resource for students and families. We also do have our family and friend weekend. We host one in the fall, and then we also just hosted our first ever spring one. So we're looking forward to continuing that. If you scan that QR code, it will bring you to the save the date for the fall family and friends weekend. I believe it's mid-September. And so that's a time that their family friends can come down. There's several different events. There's football games, tailgating. It's a really fun. There's resource fairs that you can find out resources for your student. So highly recommend those. I know that was a lot of information. So again, this will be posted on our admissions YouTube, but you can also reach out to our office if you have any questions, phone, email, carrier pigeon. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We do post a lot of deadlines, information about next steps. We share current student stories. So we just had 2 of our student workers do a takeover of our Instagram so you can see what their day is like. But please feel free to reach out to us with whatever questions that you have. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I noted if you have any questions now, you can put them in the chat bar. I will go ahead and start reading. It looks like we have a couple questions. Are there any specific medical forms that are required either in general or for sports? For sports, I'm not necessarily sure what they require. They may require different vaccinations, but typically for the residential halls, they do have to have specific vaccinations. I know my brother had to have a TB vaccination. He needed his update. So there's several general vaccinations that students do have to live in their residential halls. And those are pretty much going to be very similar to what students had to have for public schools as well, because we are a public institution. We do go by the vaccination guidelines. Any other questions?
I do have one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kristen. We're from the Chicago area, which I'm not sure there's a ton of people from up this way. How do you recommend is the best way to connect with other people as far as like helping with getting our kids back and forth?
Yeah. So we do actually get plenty of students from Illinois specifically. Actually, it's our second biggest state our first biggest state outside of Missouri. So we do have a ton. There's several different ways that students can connect. First, we get a lot of students from St. Louis. So it would be very easy for them to make friends with just other students just through class that way. And there, of course, is a train station in St. Louis. There's also the airport. The train's probably what a lot of students will take from Chicago. So if they get a ride to St. Louis, if they want to hop on the train that way. But there is also social media platform groups where it's like there's ones like Rides and Roommates. So really for a lot of other S&T students that they can find other roommates, find rides. But I definitely encourage students to join that Meet Your Class because they can specifically look for Illinois students in St. Louis that they could drop them off at the train station. I know when I was in college, I had a friend that lived in St. Louis and I would drive them there. So it's really, it's very easy to do. And I never went to Walmart by myself. So if they don't want to bring a car, it's very easy to find a ride. Oh, looks like there's another person on there that is also from Northern Illinois. So if you want to connect, that's great. One of our student ambassadors was from Chicago area. He's actually now in Peoria working for Caterpillar. He was on the Mars Rover design team. He was one of our Distinguished Scholars Award winners, which is our highest, most prestigious scholarship for out of state. And he was the CEO of the Mars Rover team. So we've had a lot of really fantastic Chicago students come our way. So what math class would someone be put in if they do not take the pre-admission math test? So I believe it is going to be college algebra that they're going to be put in if they have not completed that math placement exam. And so if they're engineering, they really want to be in Calc 1. That's typically where it starts. I highly recommend that they do take that their math placement test, it is not designed to hold a student back. What it is designed to do is make sure we know where their skills lie and where they maybe need extra help. Specifically, a lot of students kind of forget the basics with algebra and trig, and we want to make sure that they have a solid foundation before we build on top of that, because that is going to be used heavily throughout their degree program. So even my brother, who is an IST student, you know, he had to take calculus, was business calculus. So it is really important that they take that math placement, and it is a SMART test. And so the way it's designed to do is to test them on certain subjects. They do well on that. They go a little bit more in depth or a little bit harder. If they fail a little bit in a certain area, they look at where they went wrong and put them back to see if they can figure it out again. And then they give them a cooling off period so they can review where they struggled and kind of just refresh themselves. So it does give them a cooling off period where they can't retake that test again, because again, they have 3 attempts, and gives them a chance to review where they struggled, because like I said, sometimes they have gone through so many advanced classes that they forget some of the basics and they just need to refresh themselves. Oh, perfect. Looks like a lot of you are getting ready to connect. And like I said, joining that, following those parents groups, it's really great for you guys to connect. That way there is unofficial parent groups. Of course, I really recommend, if you are going to ask specific questions about like academics and deadlines and policies, to actually reach out to the offices, just because deadlines change and processes change year to year. And so to get the most current and accurate information, it's best to reach out to our office or a specific office rather than social media, because while it may be very helpful, deadlines, like I said, do change, but it is a great way for parents and families to connect. Is it good to come to the May 3rd A&R if math placement test was not completed? So first, please make sure that you are registered for that event, just because you have to be registered for that advising registration to attend, because we're getting you information prepared for advisors so they know who they're talking with. But yes, if you haven't completed it by then, you can still register in classes. And then once you have completed it, you can reach back out to your advisor and they can change your math course. So the rest of your courses you'll still be enrolled in, and you just need to change that math placement once they finish that. Are there health facilities on campus? Yes. So there is our student health center, which is right across from our fitness center. So students can go and meet with, actually it was my old physician assistant that I saw for 20 years. So I can attest that she is a fantastic physician assistant. But they have a doctor. So, you know, if a student has strep, needs to take a flu test, whatever it may be, they can go there. And if there's something more serious, they do refer them to our hospital that's just up the street. And so I really recommend making sure that you check out that. What was the name of the Facebook page for parents? So it's the unofficial S&T parents group. Please remember that is unofficial. It is not at all affiliated with us. We do have several parents that are on there, but of course, I again encourage, if you have any questions about deadlines or processes, that is something you reach out to us specifically for rather than social media, but it is a great way to connect. When do scholarship monies pay out? So that is all of that will be deducted in that once that bill generates. So if your student has already attended advising and registration, that bill is going to generate July 15th. That is when all of that stuff, all of those financial aid things are applied. And then if students have refunds, those are typically paid out. I think it's a couple weeks after class starts, usually after the end of the ad drop date, so that they know what they need to give you in terms of a refund. So that the refunds typically aren't processed until September, but scholarships and financial aid, any of that is put on and dispersed once the bill generates. So if a student does, they'll have a bill by July 5th, and has not sent us their FAFSA, we can do it later. But please, if you have not completed the FAFSA and you would like any consideration for grants, loans, you do have to have submitted that. And can you reserve a computer through the bookstore in the same way you reserve books? No, but we do have plenty of computer labs that students can access with their student ID. Does the class availability diminish if a student waits till June to register for classes? So of course, the later you get into advising and registration, students may not have the perfect 10 to 2 schedule or 8 to noon that they want, but they're still going to get their required classes. So if a student waits to a later date, again, you may not have the perfect schedule, but they are still going to get their required courses that they need. We have a system that we monitor the class selections at all times. So I know our new student programs was monitoring that this week and looking at those courses, but they will still get the required courses that they need. How many cafeterias are on campus and where are they? If your student does have allergies, I definitely encourage reaching out to dining services. You can also do accommodations through our student accessibilities office, and they work with the residential life. So if a student typically has more allergies, sometimes it's really better. It's better for them to be in University Commons because they have that kitchen and can make their own food. But we have the Havner Center food court. And so that has different locations. They have sub and salad place. They also have a burger place, so you can get gluten-free buns, vegan burgers. There's Chick-fil-A that has gluten-free buns, the fruit salad. So there's several different locations within that Havner Center. So again, very much like a mall food court. And then there's going to be TJ Hall, which are the tallest buildings in Raleigh. You can't miss them. And that's going to be a all you care to eat buffet style. And so they have different things. They have a really great salad bar. They have a home cook station that they changed the theme of. So they have different locations and different meal items typically every day. TJ is a really great place if a student does have a lot of allergies, just because they do have a lot of accommodations that they can make in there. But typically, if you, depending on what the allergy is, we do make accommodations. Our dining services is very familiar with how to work with that. If they can't be around any peanuts, they make things in a separate peanuts free area. So there's several different things that our dining services can do. Please feel free to reach out to them if you have any questions. And also, if you come for the minor welcome bash, there is typically a session that talks about dining services, and they do go over kind of how to deal with allergies, how you ask for specific things. So I highly recommend joining that minor welcome bash. Is the A&R event virtual or can be done in person? We have a couple virtual ones. So we just passed our first one. So we only have one left. And it is getting very full. So if you are wanting that virtual option, I recommend signing up for that as soon as possible. We do also have an A&R right before move-in. So if you can't make another one of the dates work, or that virtual one is full, you can join that August, I believe it's August 16th. So it's the day before move-in. There's also one before minor welcome bash. So if you want to do your advising and registration and then stay another night and do the minor welcome bash, if you're out of state, that's a really great option. So you're not having to make multiple trips. And again, the minor welcome bash is an optional thing. Advising and registration is required before classes start. What is required for a student to utilize a bicycle to travel around the campus? You don't have to have a permit or anything. You want to make sure you have a lock. I mean, Rolla is a very safe place. We're one of the top 25 safest campuses in the country. Our police chief is actually ex-Secret Service. There's plenty of cameras. We have a Rave Guardian app that students can have and download their phone. So I highly recommend students do download the Rave Guardian app, because you can let someone know where you're going. And when you get there, you can request walking a guide to walk you to and from places. I do feel very safe on campus. Sometimes I'm there very late, but you do want to take common sense safety precautions, and that Rave Guardian app is a very easy way to do that. but there isn't a permit. So again, recommend a lock. There's bike racks all around campus. You do have to you can't like write it in buildings, obviously, and things like that. But you just want to make sure you bring a lock with you. One of our student ambassadors, he calls it a one wheel, and we'll go around campus on that. We have hoverboards, skateboards. We're also a very handicap accessible campus. We're pretty condensed and pretty flat campus. Okay, I think I answered all the questions. Any last minute questions or anything that I can help answer now? Okay. Well, I do appreciate all of you guys joining us. And it's been a great evening. I see a couple more questions coming through. Is there scooter motorcycle parking? Yes, there is. Again, you do have to have a parking permit for that, but there is scooter and motorcycle parking. There's also meter parking. So if they don't plan to really park there a ton, there are meter spots. But again, we really appreciate you guys all joining us, and really we're excited to go through this journey with you and welcome your future minor to campus. Please know that we are here to help you with whatever you need. So if I didn't answer your question, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. It is really easy email. We get back to students really within 24 hours, as long as you're emailing during business hours. But feel free to reach out with whatever you need, and have a great rest of your night.